Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning, David, and welcome to podcast number 17.
And good morning, David. We got a beautiful day in the GTA today, and things are still active. Nice fall weather, and people are getting out. So tell us what's going on in the market these days.
Well, the market, David, is still busy. There's still a huge shortage of inventory. We're still seeing a lot of multiple offers, and we're seeing still things move at a really quick pace. Most listings are coming to market. Agents are still holding back offers. Sellers are still holding back offers. And there's still lots of bidding wars going on for properties, all types of properties. You know, before you used to have the AAA property and, the pie-shaped bungalow on a quiet street. That's the one that would command multiples. But now we're seeing even houses on busy intersections are coming on the market. The demand is just phenomenal. And, we're seeing the market move really, really quickly.
So the demand is still outpacing the supply. So it's still keeping that dynamic in the marketplace. Still not as much supply as everybody would like to see out there to stop some of the bidding that's going on.
People are just not listing property for sale, David. We are seeing number of offers go up. So we have a statistic through the system that we use to keep track of appointments and keep track of how many offers are registered. I can see that the number of offers being made this year in 2021 compared to 2020 is up 46%. So, consumers are going out there, they're viewing properties, they're submitting offers, but they're just not being successful. And we know they're not being successful because the number of transactions is way down, right? So when we look at these, analytics, it really does point a picture to exactly what's happening, right? Showings are up 3% year over year. The days on the market is down 17%, which means that houses are actually selling faster, right? When the days on the market decreases, houses are selling faster. And number of listings. This is the most convincing one. Year over year, we are down 44%, which is an astonishing number, right? Yeah. And you have to remember that in COVID, people weren't listing their homes either because they were scared. They were not really knowing what's going to happen. They didn't want people coming to their homes and possibly bring the virus into their family settings. So people were really reluctant to list. And then from that low that we've had in 2020, we're still down a further 44%, which is just astonishing.
Yeah, but what might be affecting it a little bit, if you remember last year, 2020, we had a COVID lull that sort of hit and slowed down the spring market and the summer market a little bit. And then there was an increase in the fall. So September, October, November, even right through December, and from our point of view with closings, ended up quite active and quite busy. So for us, for closings last year, October, November, and even December were busy, like really busy months, and busier than in a normal year because there was sort of that a little bit of a delayed reaction. So I think you're probably seeing a little bit of that in those numbers too, because when you're comparing last October to this October, there was a bit of a bump last year that was sort of created artificially by the COVID delay that happened earlier in the year. There was just that delay of people getting back to the market. So, but still, that doesn't answer for 44%. That might account for some of it, but there's still a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, we basically saw that the activity peak in the summertime last year, right? That's when all the restrictions were lifted. That's when people kind of started, going back to the new normal, right? But when I look at 44%, that's year over year. So that's right. Taking, the time in 2021 and comparing it to exactly the same time period throughout the whole year in 2020. So, I mean, it's still an astonishing number. And I think that really points to where the issue is on the supply side of the chain, right? Demand is still very constant. We still have a lot of immigration coming in, I heard numbers that in July, those are the last numbers I heard, we had about 39,000 immigrants come in to Canada. A lot of our agents, work with a lot of newcomers to Canada. A lot of dentists, a lot of lawyers, a lot of professionals come in, and a lot of my agents, work with them to help them secure new housing. But I mean, again, the demand is outpacing the supply in a big way. And that's what's really causing the problems that we're having, the shortages that we're having in our marketplace right now. And when my argument is that sellers have traditionally made a big mistake every single time they sold a property, because as they wait, properties just increase in value. And we're seeing this happen over and over and over again. And now we're at a point where sellers just don't want to list because they know they're going to hold their house for another 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months. The value is going to keep appreciating, especially since we're talking about inflation so much.
Right. But then you have to look at each seller too, because the question really becomes, what is their plan? If they're downsizing and they're not in a particular rush to do it, then they might want to wait it out, right? Sell, maybe sell next spring's market or something like that. They might be able to get more. But if they're looking to buy as well, because they're stepping up or they're going laterally or something, generally you want them to buy and sell in the same market, right? So they got to take that into consideration too. So, everything you're telling me so far really reinforces how important an agent is in this process. Because you imagine you're a buyer out there right now looking for a house, and every time you find something you like, there's going to be multiple offers in there. And you really have to rely on the expertise of your agent to guide you through the process and to help you determine what the real value is at the house, to help you set your expectations as to how high you might have to bid to get something, whether you're going to overpay it for it. The fact that there's a really good chance you're going to lose it. There's going to be 8 offers coming in and only one is going to be successful, and there's going to be that disappointment, and then you're going to go with the next one. Like, it's really, really important to have the proper advice from a real estate agent in a market like this.
It's paramount, David. I can't stress that enough. And I mean, I've seen, I was involved in multiple offer situations where the offer in front of me was $100,000 more than the second offer in line. And I think that agent, even though their client won the house, is doing a huge disservice to their clients, right? Because whether they paid, we were already at our max, right? Because by this time everybody's gets pushed as much as possible. So my buyer is already at their max. All the other buyers are already at their max. And this offer that's in front of us is in front of us by leaps and bounds. And whether they're in front of us by $2,000 or $100,000, they're still in front of us, right? So again, it's all about building relationships, understanding body language, asking the right questions, and really representing your clients to the best of your abilities, right? Anybody can go in and blow the offer process out of the water, but that's not what this is about. This is about, having a fiduciary duty to your client, acting in their best interest every step of the way, and protecting them throughout this process as well.
Yeah, and it's a difficult conversation to have with a client when you're trying to manage their expectations. Say, yeah, you want to buy this semi that's now going to cost $1 million to buy when it should have been $850,000 a year ago, and that might be the value. But no, if you want to get this one, it's going to cost you $1 million. But if you only have $850,000, you can't get that anymore. You have to reset your sights in something lesser, and and give up some of the things that are on your list of priorities, and that's a tough conversation to have with people.
It is, but I mean, you nailed it, David. I mean, incremental increases and incremental expectations, and if you're looking for that dream home, then perhaps there's 1 or 2 houses in between. And that's the route that you have to take in this market. But the most important aspect is to, be in the market. I know a lot of listeners out there, want to jump in, want to become investors, want to own the property. Come talk to us, because there's still a lot of different things we can show you. There's, and actually the biggest trend right now that a lot of realtors are exploring because of the lack of shortages is pre-construction units for sale through builders, right? And especially in this market where we have such huge shortages in the resale market, when the builder releases a subdivision or when one of these condominiums becomes available on the market, we're seeing 2, 3, 4, 500 units come on at one time, right? So there is inventory out there, and that at least solves our inventory issues.
Right, and that's the basic source of the new inventory that comes in quickly, and there's market conditions that affect the pre-construction market as well. And some of those units, as fast as they come on the market, they get gobbled up pretty quickly too, which puts a lot of pressure on people to make decisions quickly as well. So how do you guys approach it when a new release happens at a condo project or in a subdivision?
Yeah, and great question, David. I mean, this is not a new concept, right? I mean, I think every single real estate that we see that is resale real estate at one point was sold through a builder. And I mean, the way that works is a lot of these builders sell these houses through plans and from layouts even before they're built, right? So you walk into a sales center and you see layout and models and quality of finishes, and you can choose which lot you want your house, and you can choose whether you want to be on the corner or on the interior lot. And some sites have some nice features like ponds or ravines or some green spaces in the back. But every single house that we see at some point, a lot of them were part of a subdivision that was sold throughout in the process that we're seeing pre-construction being sold right now. So it's not a new concept. It's something that's been around for a really long time. And it's something that a lot of our customers are asking for right now as well. So it's actually a great topic that we're going to be discussing. And today we're going to be talking about how to sell pre-construction real estate.
Yeah, and there's one fundamental difference when you're in that market is the timing. So in the resale market, you're looking for something that's pretty immediate. You could be putting an offer and you might be closing in 2-3 weeks. You might be closing in a month, 60 days. 90 days is a long time period. You're actually closing and you're in the house. When you're talking pre-construction on a subdivision, you're usually talking minimum a year or two down the road till it's done, unless it happens to be the tail end of a project and one of the last few houses that's almost ready. The inventory is almost over for that project. And on a condominium project, you're looking usually 3 to 5 years down the road from the time you're going to sign the agreement of purchase and sale until you're actually going to physically occupy that unit. So it's a bit of a different time frame, but fundamentally different there. And you're looking for clients that are going to be waiting that out, and you're managing those type of expectations. And where are you going to be in the meantime? If it's going to take you 3 to 5 years to get in, where are you going to live in the meantime? Are you renting? Are you buying? Are you living somewhere else? Are you staying? Are you going to do another move in between? So there's a lot of conversations that you as an agent have to have with those clients that are totally different from managing their expectations on a resale transaction.
Yeah, it's night and day. And we're finding that a lot of customers that go and look at pre-construction are investors, right? Especially in the condominium side. But a lot of first-time home buyers buy it as well. And timing is an issue. It is a little bit harder to plan because these projects get delayed, and it's not really the fault of the developer. There's just so many moving pieces. There's land registry, there's severances, there's utilities that have to get put in, there's municipalities that have to be worked with, there's utility companies, right? So there's so many different moving pieces, and all has to come together.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to for builders and developers to know the exact timing, and that's why there's a bunch of safeguards built into standard agreements of purchase and sales and Terrian warranties, which we'll discuss, etc., that allow for delays in closing, allow for some limited delays in closing and rights of parties, because there's a lot of things that have to be considered there. Now, it's really interesting when something new comes on the market, a new subdivision is open or a new condo project is open, and they announce an opening, and you'd go to the sales office and you'd walk in and there's already a whole bunch that are sold somehow when you get in there. Like you're the first guy in the door, Sometimes there's a lineup outside. You get in there and you see a bunch of red dots on the subdivision because these indicating these lots have already been sold. And you go, well, how did that happen? Or the same with condo units. And they just opened today. And how come they've got all these units that have been sold?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, you have to kind of go back and look at real estate over the last 15, 20 years. Builders know that by the time they finish a subdivision, values are going to dramatically go up, right? So in order for them to secure financing to start the building process, usually they have to sell about 70% of the subdivision or 70% of the building. It could be a little bit higher depending on what terms they negotiate with the lender, but usually that's around the number that units have to be sold. So some builders will hold back a number of units and release them closer to the completion date because they want to experience that appreciation in prices, just like the consumer is going to realize their appreciation in prices over the period that the condo or the subdivision is being built as well. Right.
There's also some builders, I think it seems like it's most builders these days, that have some sort of pre-sale before they're officially open to the public. They have some sort of pre-sale for family and friends type of thing, where they're offering units. And a lot of times these are units that are being bought by speculators, by investors that sort of jump in on the ground floor and get it, at good prices. Sometimes they get, some of the better units or better lots get gobbled up that way. And they have these pre-opening sales. So that's why sometimes when someone from the actual public goes in, they see that there's a lot of the inventory is already gone. And they're shaking their heads. And not only is the inventory gone, but every time they sell one, the price seems to go up for the next comparable unit.
Yeah, David, they do a couple of different pre-sales, right? So friends and family is a big one. Obviously, these are big supporters of the developer. These are people that have bought previously. These are people that have bought multiple units. These are, their construction partners that were absolutely instrumental in helping them get the site going. And, they open the first release of units to that group of people, right? And then they go down the line, right? So if you're an existing client, you bought previous units, then, you get a right to go in and choose a unit. So they go through this process of these pre-sales, and by the time it hits the general public, a lot of the times it's very limited inventory. It's the units that nobody else wanted, because again, there's been several groups of people that have been given the opportunity to go ahead and pick through some of the inventory before it actually gets open to the general public.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind is generally when they open up for sale, they're not always offering all the homes in a subdivision or all the units in a condominium. They're often doing it in phases. Sometimes certain floors are available in a condo. Same thing in a subdivision. Sometimes, they do it in 2 or 3 or 4 phases because they can't build them all necessarily at the same time. So they want to build a certain percentage in the first phase, a certain percentage in the second phase. So they have these different openings for different phases as well. That helps them then control actually their construction timing, but it also allows them every time you open a new phase to reevaluate the prices that they're offering and the incentives that they're offering and things like that. So it's not like a 300 unit condominium opens up and all 300 units are available for a buyer. I've had interesting conversations with a builder because you remember the days when the builder in a subdivision would open up. Once they do open to the public, and they'd end up with these long lineups, like literally long lineup. People were camping out overnight to get first in line to get in there. And at some point, a few years back, they stopped that process and started, but they won't even let you in the door without pre-qualifying you. So if you want to come and get into their sales office, you have to go through an application process with the builder first, which will include evidence of your financial ability to actually buy one of these, because they don't want to waste your time and waste a spot or waste their salesman's time in a sales office dealing with someone that might be a tire kicker, or may not, just someone that's curious, or maybe someone that just won't be able to afford it or won't be able to close. So they won't even allow you to come in. They won't give you an appointment to even come in. They won't send you a sales brochure, a piece of marketing, nothing until you qualify. as a legitimate buyer. And I thought, like, wow, like that's a lot of time and effort. He says, no, but we have to do it. Otherwise, we're wasting time. We have a limited inventory. So we don't want anybody in the door unless we know that they could really buy. So, that's another place where an agent comes in to play, because you're doing the same thing. Like, you're qualifying your clients. You have someone interested in new construction. So you're really going through that process too, before you even take them to a site to say, to do your homework and pre-qualify them as a real potential buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a construction lender requirement as well. They want to know that the 70% of the units that they sell, are bona fide sale, right? And they can actually close when the unit's built, right? Because that construction mortgage, if those 70 people are not able to close on that transaction, well, then they just lent money based on something that can't, come to fruition, right? So the lender that the builder is dealing with has very stringent stipulations as to, what kind of proof they need and what kind of a pre-qualification they need. A lot of the times they need pre-qualification from an A lender, and banks have really changed how they do these pre-qualifications letters, because there has to be a process here. There has to be an actual vetting process here. Before, you used to be able to call up your mortgage broker and say, hey, listen, I want to go buy a pre-construction condo. Can you write me a letter that I'm good? And he'd be like, yeah, no problem. Let me go ahead on my computer, type up the letter, right? But now lenders and builders are requiring that an actual pre-approval needs to take place, that there needs to be a case file associated on the pre-approval itself, that it needs to be a reference, that there actually needs to be an application on file with the bank. It's a much more regimented process. And where the value of the agent really comes in is, a lot of the times, these mortgage brokers and even these financial institutions, they're not really used to working with these pre-construction approvals. So you really have to find the right mortgage broker that can actually give you an approval that will be active 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line when the condo actually closes and comes to fruition. Because a lot of the times in the resale market, when you go get pre-approved, your pre-approval is only valid for about 90 days.
Right. And people fall into that trap sometimes, like thinking they got pre-approved, but they got pre-approved for what? And sometimes, like you said, it's for a limited time period, and you can't possibly get this condo built within that time frame, or the new house. So the pre-approval is not worth anything to you. And sometimes a pre-approval document comes with a whole bunch of conditions. It's like, yeah, we'll approve you for a mortgage as long as you satisfy the following 20 conditions, some of which they have no chance of satisfying, down the road when you actually look at it. So everybody has to have proper guidance with the proper agent and proper brokers that understand this, and getting something that's a real proper qualified pre-approval. And there's really been a flip on this. Like, years ago, you'd go into to buy a new construction, and you might sign your agreement and it's conditional. Maybe it's conditional on lawyer review, but a lot of times it's conditional on the buyer obtaining financing, and make sure you get financing. And that was a condition in favor of the buyer at the time, to make sure you take your agreement purchase sale, get it to the bank, and make sure you get your approval. But now those clauses have really been switched, because it's conditional on financing, but it's really for the seller, the builder, to be satisfied that you have proper financing. So even though you think you've got a firm agreement of purchase and sale, if you can't satisfy the builder's requirements for proper evidence that you could get the financing, the builder pulls the plug on the agreement, not the buyer, and says, sorry, we're not selling this to you because we don't think you're going to get the financing. You haven't given us enough evidence that you're properly qualified for a mortgage. We're going to sell it to the next guy. Because like you said, they need to show this to their lender to get their construction financing, and they need to meet that threshold, whether it's 70%, 80%, whatever their threshold is. They can't put a shovel in the ground until they satisfy their lender. They've got real buyers that aren't going to disappear on them 3 years down the road because they never really got a proper mortgage approval.
Yeah. And David, reputation is everything in this industry, but we are seeing some of the smaller builders use some of these technicalities to get out of some of these agreements of purchase and sale, because they know that, this agreement was entered 3 years ago. the price has already risen 150,000, and if we have 20 units that we can nullify the agreement and cancel it because we're not satisfied with the financing that the buyer is providing and the approval, that's 20 times 150 appreciation. That's a lot of money. That's $3 million that the builder can make over and above what they've already made just by reneging on these 20 agreements and reselling the units at current condo prices. So some of the more reputable builders don't get into technicalities like that and are far more reputable. But again, this is where the advice of a realtor really comes into play, because when you enter into a relationship like this and you're putting in, $150,000 deposit in some of these units, and you're waiting 3, 4, 5 years, the last thing you want is for the builder to cancel the project or to cancel your agreement. And it really depends on their circumstances. They cancel the project, your money is fully protected by Tarion. You will get your deposit back, but you get it back without interest. Right. So, and we're talking about large sums of money. Like if you put $150,000 down, your money's locked in for 4 years, and then you get your money back. Great. But you just got back, what you put in, and you haven't made any money on top of your money.
Right. And then you're going back to the market to buy something else, but you're buying it with appreciated values. Right. Now, it's interesting. You're saying that your deposit monies are protected. And in many cases they are, but that's something that we look out for when we're reviewing agreements, purchase and sale, to make sure that their deposit monies are protected, because there are limits on coverage. And it depends if it's a condo, depends if it's a subdivision, the deposits are insured a little bit differently. And that's one of the things we look at when we're reviewing an agreement of purchase and sale, like who are the deposit checks payable to, and are they going to be covered, and when was an agreement signed? Because that changes. A change back in January 2018. So a lot of times it depends when an agreement was signed before that or after that. It seems like we're now near the end of 2021. It seems like a long time ago, but not in the world of subdivisions and condominiums under new construction, because a lot of times we're coming up to closings on things that happened 3 years ago in 2018. So some of these things come into play. So there are different coverages we have to look at and make sure, that there isn't exposed deposits, because sometimes there are. So certain, like on a condo, certain amount of deposit could be paid to the builder. Like the first 20,000 can be made payable to the builder because that's covered by Tarion. Deposits above that have to be covered with proper protection under the trust provisions of the Condominium Act. So it goes to the seller's lawyer's trust account, and they provide a certificate confirming that they've got it, and there's insurance coverage to protect those deposits. So, we hope at the end of the day, when projects don't go ahead, that everybody gets back their money, but we've seen, too many examples where not all the deposits were fully protected. And then, like you said, even if they do get all the deposit monies back, they get it back without interest, and it's 3 years later, and now they're in a different market and trying to go buy another thing, and they've lost that opportunity. So again, you want to go to projects with reputable builders, with the advice of an agent guiding you through it, so there's a better chance that these projects are going to go forward.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And I think it's really important to note, David, and I don't think there's not enough agents taking advantage of this, but especially when you're buying a condominium, pre-con builder, you have a 10-day cooling period that's mandated by law, right?
Right.
And in that 10-day cooling period, I encourage all realtors and all clients to take the agreement of purchase and sale, including the Tarion schedule, and take it to your office and sit down with one of your lawyers and have it reviewed. It's a fundamentally important process. You will find out a lot about, what type of clauses the builder has in there. Your office will talk to the potential buyer about delay clauses and what the latest date of delay can be. There's a lot in there, development charges, school levies that need to be discussed. But that is a very important process to go through.
Yeah, and it's a completely different process when we review an agreement of purchase and sale and pre-construction or new construction compared to a resale market. Like a standard agreement of purchase and sale, a TREB form or RIA form for a resale market, the standard form itself is what, like 2 or 3 pages long, and then you attach a couple schedules, a schedule with some additional clauses. Usually a broker has a standard Schedule B that has certain standard clauses in it. But the whole document is 5 or 6 pages long, and most of it is standard provisions and then a few negotiated provisions, which are always important. But it's totally fundamentally different than pre-construction or new construction, when an agreement of purchase and sale would typically be 20, 30 pages long in fine print with a whole bunch of schedules attached, plus the Terrian warranty schedule, plus information on the subdivision. Or if it's a condominium, you've got all the disclosure documents, all the condominium documents, the draft declaration and bylaws of the condominium corporation. It's in the days when it was all paper, it could be 6 inches thick of paper with all the schedules and everything. Now we're getting it electronically, but it's still a lot of volume to go through and a lot of fine print to go through. And the issues that come up on new construction are totally different than resale in terms of timing issues, delayed closing issues, extension rights, and then all the adjustments. And right. I think probably, next week next podcast, we'll probably get into some of that and talk about some of the extension issues and the adjustments that we look through. But it's a completely different process.
Absolutely, it really is. But having it reviewed by your office is fundamentally important, right? Because that 10-day cooling period is written as a condition subsequent, right? Meaning that
I love when you talk legalese. I try to follow what you're saying.
Well, meaning that if you don't act, you have an agreement at the end of the 10-day period, right? So the buyer has to initiate the cancellation, right? Which is really important to understand that as well, right? You have the option to cancel, but you need to act in order to cancel. And if you fail to act, then the agreement turns firm and binding at the end of the 10-day period, right? Which is
yeah, and it's interesting. Like you mentioned the 10-day cooling off period, and some people in the public, we get this all the time from clients, is they assume that applies to all new construction. Right. But it doesn't. That's strictly in the condominium market. That's built into the Condominium Act, where you have that 10-day cooling period. So, and the time that 10 days starts once the buyer receives the signed agreement of purchase and sale back from the builder, from the seller, including all the schedules and the full disclosure package for the condominium project, if it's a condominium, right? So that's when the 10-day cooling off period starts. So, and like you said, by the end of it, if this buyer does nothing, then the time just lapses and the deal becomes firm. So during that 10 days, we have to send a letter to the lawyer for the seller after we do our review saying, we're acting for the buyer, we reviewed it, and in order for us to firm this up, we require the following changes. We want to delete this, we want to amend that, we want to cap this. We go through that process and we send off that letter. And then we wait for the response, because if the builder comes back and says no to everything, then it's back in the buyer's court. Are we going to firm up or not firm up? Because we've told them that we're not accepting it unless those changes are being made. So now it's back in our court to either say, yeah, we're going to go ahead, or no, we're not going ahead, right? But the important point to make here, that applies only to new construction condominiums. It does not apply to a freehold, property in a subdivision. There's no cooling off period. So we encourage everybody to get those agreements to a lawyer as well. And so the only way you're going to do that is you have to get a condition put into the agreement of purchase and sale that it's conditional upon lawyer review. Sometimes you can get that, sometimes you can't when the market's really hot. Sometimes builders aren't going to give you that because there's just too much of a lineup. They don't want, you take it as is. Some of the builders will give a buyer their standard agreement of purchase and sale to look at and send it to your lawyer before it's been completed for anything. And they'll say, here, go ahead and look at it. But, and tell us any comments you have, but we're not even signing an agreement with you yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an interesting process, but I mean, when you logically think about it, David, it makes sense. When you're buying a condominium, there's so many moving parts. You want to make sure that you're buying from a reputable builder. You want to review the bylaws. Maybe pets are allowed or not allowed. You want to look at the common expenses. You want to look at, what the expenditures and what the maintenance fees are going to be. You want to look at maybe the property management contract and see how all that is structured. You want to look at, there's so many different aspects that you need to look at when you're buying a condominium unit, not only the unit itself, but you're buying into the building, into the complex, into the amenities, and into everything else. So it takes a lot longer to review all that and to be comfortable with it, right? And I think over the last several years, these builders, when they release these units and the type of supply and demand that they create through their marketing and how they allocate these units and how they release these units and how they go through different spheres and only release maybe, hey, friends and family, but there's only, 30 units available, and, friends and family list is 200. And then people see, people getting out checkbooks and writing checks, and, they get, bought into this whole hype. So the government came out and rightfully made a 10-day cooling period when it comes to condominium units being sold. I think it's very beneficial for the marketplace and the buyers, and it keeps everybody honest as well. But that doesn't happen when it comes to freehold sales in a subdivision.
Yeah, and I think when you think about it, a lot of it would make sense if they pass some legislation to have a built-in cooling off period in that market as well, because there's a lot of things that go on in that market. There's a lot of frenzy, and there's ebbs and flows in these markets too. It's where there aren't long lineups, for potential buyers in these subdivisions, but that hasn't been the norm in recent years in the GTA anyways. Every time a new phase, gets released from a builder, it seems like they really get bought up pretty quickly. So it's people going in not really having a lot of opportunities to negotiate on it. But we do find, when we do review these agreements of purchase and sale, we're writing letters, dealing a lot of times with these adjustments that they pass on to buyers, which sometimes are in the $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 range, in addition to the purchase price. So we're taking a hard look at that, and we're writing to the builder's lawyers saying, hey, you can delete this one, cap that one, tell us how much this one's going to be, because we want to have some certainty for the buyers as to what they're getting into. And they may have stretched themselves to buy the unit, and all of a sudden on closing, they got an additional $20,000 they got to pay to the builder in addition to the purchase price. And they've already put all their nickels together, and they can't cover that. So we got to make sure they're going in with their eyes open, and what they're, and to understand what their closing costs potentially could be the best we can. So, that's an important part of the process too. And sometimes we have success with a builder's lawyer, and they come back and they give us, they cap some of the costs or delete. And sometimes we get zero success, and it just depends on the market conditions and what the lineups are like at that time. Because the builders generally get an idea of what they're going to be asked for by lawyers when we do review it. So they sort of have some standard answers that they're prepared to give you at a point in time. But that could change a week later, because the market could really get quiet, or the market could pick up, and then all of a sudden they're changing the type of answers they're giving you. So we still have to ask the question. We still have to make the effort. It's really important, because those costs can be significant.
Absolutely. That was going to be my next question, David, is, you do a lot of these, you write a lot of these letters, you communicate a lot with these lawyers that represent the builder. In your experience, what percentage of the builders are willing to negotiate on some of those in their contracts?
Well, I don't want to sound evasive, my answer, because it really does change with market conditions. But there's many builders, most of the good builders, come up with a plan, and they say, okay, we're going to sell these. We're anticipating that this is what the lawyers are going to ask for. There's been times when we've been early on a project, and we've gone to a builder and we say, look, we know that we're going to have a whole bunch of clients on this project. these are the things that we're looking for. And if we agree upon this, for the next few months, any of our clients will agree to the same thing, certain built-in changes. And I know that you guys do the same thing. So sometimes they come up with, okay, these are the changes we're prepared to make, and they sort of establish that. I always think it's still worthwhile to ask for more than that, because you just never know. The worst they could do is say no again, right? If you don't ask, you don't get anything. So a lot of times, even though they've already said, okay, we're going to cap certain adjustments, and for these clients, even sometimes they have that in amendment before we even review it. They've capped certain adjustments or deleted certain adjustments. We're still going through a process where we're going to ask for more. The worst they could say is no, but sometimes they say yes, and it could be significant savings to a client. Now, I've had conversations with a couple builders, major players in the market, and they said, don't even bother asking us for anything. This was over in the last 6 months. Don't even bother asking us, because our answer is going to be no. So, go ahead if you want it, because, you want to show your client they're asking, this is what you want to ask for. But I'm telling you, our answer is going to be no. On all these projects, we got 6 different projects going on in the GTA, condo projects, high rise, and we're not doing anything for anybody because we don't have to right now.
Yeah.
I said, all right, that's fine for doing it now. But again, I had that conversation probably 6 months ago with them. If we're looking at units or a phase that comes out in that project right now, I don't know if it's the same answer, right? Because I don't know, I'm not privy to how much of a lineup they've got, or how many qualified buyers they have. So I would still go through the process and still send them a letter. If they say no, they're going to say no. But you just never know. If you don't ask, you don't get anything.
Well, 100%, totally agree. The last pre-construction sale we were involved in, I think they had 10 applications for every 1 unit that was available for sale. And if you really think about it, that's an exorbitant amount of demand for a very, very low supply, right? And that's why these builders are able to command the prices, they're able to command some of the terms and contracts that they are, is because the market is so geared towards the builder right now.
Right. So you as an agent trying to guide your buyer client through a new construction process, I guess one of the keys for you is just, finding out the right project to go to take them to, like, not waste their time trying to drag them into somewhere where they're, they can't, they're just going to be in a lineup and they're going to have no success, or they're not going to be able to afford it because ultimately they're not going to, have an opportunity to negotiate on any of these adjustments. And there might be $20,000 of adjustments, and that might push them right out of their affordability of those units, right? So you got to be taking them to the right project with the right timing, expectations, and things like that.
Absolutely. And a lot of those decisions are relationship based, right? How many units has my office sold with a particular builder? What kind of relationship do we have with that builder? How many allocations are we going to get, right? And I mean, that's the number one question is, if you have the relationship and, you have the allocations and you've worked with the builder in the past, then it's a lot easier to get allocations. But even then, if you have 10-to-1 applications, as realtors, we really have to set expectations for our clients in terms of how many units they're going to be able to obtain, if they're even able to obtain 1 unit from a builder as well.
So maybe explain how that allocation system works when you approach a builder and you're trying to get allocations, how that process works. And then let's say you've got a certain allocation, how you deal with that internally within a brokerage like yours, that you've got, 200 odd agents that, not all of them are dealing in that market, but many of them are. So how do you deal with it? Firstly, acquiring that allocation, and then how do you deal with it internally?
Yeah, David, great question. And it's very much the same sort of system that the builder goes through. We have our internal lists as well of past clients that we've worked with, and we go down that list as well, right? So we give priority to people that have transacted with us in the past. We give priority to agents that have sold pre-construction in the past. And we go down that list as well, the same way that the builder does. So when you look at the builder and you kind of look at the agents and our clients, it's very much a pyramid scheme, and we work downwards, and we give priority to the most qualified buyers that have transacted with us previously in the past.
And in terms of you approaching the builder, saying, hey, here we're Sutton Summit, here, here's our history, here's what we did with you in your last project. We understand you got this one coming up, and you're trying to get an allocation. So what's your basic pitch to them? And then what type of allocation can you realistically expect to get from them?
Well, every builder is different, right? But I mean, we put the whole strength of our office behind the relationship. So we have 235 agents. We have a lot of agents that deal with pre-construction as their main source of income. One agent, Tariq Jindwa, he sells over 200 pre-construction suites a year. So, I mean, he has a phenomenal relationship with some of these builders as well personally, but it's all a relationship business. So we put the whole strength of the brokerage behind our relationships, and we sell a lot of volume. So the builders look at us and say, okay, here's Sutton Summit. They have 235 agents. If each agent on average has a list of 10 amazing clients that have purchased pre-construction before, that's a huge pool of buyers that we have access to. And builders love dealing with big brokerages like us, because we do a lot of volume with them.
So what kind of commitment do you get from them in terms of an allocation? Like, what will they say? You got X number of units for a certain period of time that will give it to you first. If they're not sold, we take it back. Like, how does that process usually work?
That happens very quickly. So there's a lot of work that goes before the launch of a project. We have to, really set expectations and, have all the worksheets ready to go, and really work very closely with the client so they understand the process and really what happens next. And the allocations are really given to the platinum agents for a period of sometimes 24 hours. And you have 24 hours to move all those units. And if you can't move your units in 24 hours, then the builder takes them away, gives them to agent, and that clock resets. And usually within 36 to 48 hours, the majority of the units are sold in a condo building. It happens very quickly.
Yeah, the whole process is really fast. You have to mobilize quickly. The agents that are involved, have to know their clients, have to get them ready. Get as much information to them as they can, as quick as they can, because they got to act quickly. And, that's just the nature of the beast. Now, the process slows down a little bit if you actually get under contract, because then you have that 10-day cooling off period to deal with it. But you got to get in and get the unit under contract first to even get there. And then the builders aren't happy if they, at the end of that 10 days, if people that you bring them are then passing on it and not going ahead with it, right? They don't want to get it back 10 days later and have to sell it again to somebody else.
Well, I mean, if that happens, it really defeats the whole purpose and the whole cycle, right? Because now, the builder's reputation is called into question. If a lot of units are being returned, then, it creates this basically catapult effect, right? You want to be able to sell all the units in the first round, close the door, and move on to the next project, right? And a lot of these agents that have a lot of sales that renege in the 10-day cooling period, next time around, they're given less allocations because their clients are determined that they're, wishy-washy, or they're not committed, or, they're backing out. So, there's a lot of politics that go into play here. And how you kind of deal with that is you really have to do a lot of really good grunt work before the launch of the project as a brokerage, as an agent. You really have to vet your clients. You really have expectations. Again, dealing with clients that have purchased pre-construction in the past, your likelihood of them reneging that 10-day period is much lower, because they're a lot more used to, when they make a decision and say, okay, you know what, I want to buy this unit. They've purchased units before in the past. They know what the closing is going to be like. They know about the cap fees. They know what the occupancy date. They know what it all kind of looks like. And there's less possibility of them to say, you know what, I changed my mind. This isn't for me. Usually those people that have transacted in the past, there's a far lesser degree of them saying, you know what, we're not going to move forward in the 10-day cooling period. And of course, builders love that because they want to sell all the units right away.
Right. And they want to sell as many as they can quickly because they want to get the shovel in the ground, and they need that threshold. They need that 70% or 80% or whatever that threshold is to start. And then they'll worry about selling off the rest of their inventory after they're under construction, and the prices have gone up anyways for the last 20-30% of their inventory. They're selling those at a higher values than the first 70% that gets them in the ground. So it's important, and they don't want them back. And I think as an agent, like you have to know exactly what your client's going to be able to afford too. And if they're buying a $500,000 condo unit, and it comes down to the negotiation on adjustments, and if it turns out there's $20,000 of adjustments, and that's going to break the deal for them, then there's a problem, because so that if they pass on that, now you got to take them to another one. They still want to buy something. So now you got to take them something that's going to be, $480,000 price with $20,000 of adjustments. Like, the adjustments are going to be there in one form or another. So you've got to be evaluating, what's the purchase price, including an expectation of some of these adjustments. Now, there might be a negotiation. Maybe instead of 20,000, it becomes 15,000. Maybe it's 5,000. But you don't want that always to be the make or break. Oh, they're not going to give me they're not going to cap the levies at $10,000. So I might end up paying 15,000, and that breaks the deal. That you got the wrong buyer if that's really going to be the deal breaker, right? Yeah.
I couldn't agree
more. The wrong project.
I couldn't agree more. The other aspect that I'm going to say, and I think there's going to be a lot of upset people that I'm going to say this, but the contract that the sales office signs with the builder actually penalizes the sales office that represents the builder from representing the client. Okay, so let me explain that to you, Dave, because it's actually an interesting concept. So when a builder hires a sales office to sell all the units, they give them a flat fee or a very low fee to represent them, the builder, right? But whoever represents the buyer always gets the 4%. So if a buyer walks to the sales center and goes directly to the builder's sales office, those salespeople do not get to keep the 4%.
Right.
They only keep whatever that flat fee is that they negotiate with the builder for selling each unit. Now, this creates a little bit of an issue, okay? Because a lot of times builders, especially when they're represented by a sales office, do not want to deal directly with the client. And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is because the client will ask 50 questions. The client's going to follow up about, when closing is going to take place. The client's going to have questions about finishes, right? And they want somebody else to deal with all those inquiries and to manage the expectations of their buyers. All they want to do is sell that project as quickly as possible with the least resistance. And how they do that is a lot of the times when a buyer will walk into a sales office directly and try to talk to any of the staff that's representing the builder, they're going to defer them to our realtor and say, you know what, we're really busy. We can't really give you the attention that you want. Look, there's a realtor sitting right there. Why don't you go talk to him? Right.
It's worth it to them to pay the 4% to an agent, because the agent's going to earn that 4% and do a lot of work and a lot of hand holding with the buyer and explain the process and find out what's really available and what can be negotiated and do all that. So they're making the agent's going to earn their 4%. They're making it work, but it's really part of the process. Because you're right, the people in the sales office are not going to take the time to deal with it. They don't have the time, and they don't, and they're not going to sit down with a buyer that way.
Yep. I remember
And
one
the
of
builders are happy to pay the 4%. Like, it's built into their system. They're happy to pay. That helps them get the deal. It's not like they prefer you to come without an agent and, and just put an offer in. They're better off paying the 4% in most cases.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of politics there between the builder and the sales office that they hire. And of course, the builder doesn't want to pay the 4%. They want the sales office to do their job, sell the units quickly, and avoid paying that 4% wherever possible, right? But again, there's a conflict between how quickly the units get sold, who gets paid, and then who deals with the customer's issues and all the follow-ups when everything is completed. So the learning lesson here is, make sure you approach a realtor before going to talk to a sales office, right? Because it will work in your benefit. Yeah,
absolutely. So I know we're sort of short on time here, so I think we're going to continue this topic next week. We'll talk a little bit more of some of the adjustments that we've been talking about and what's involved in that. So what people can expect. And I think we should talk a little bit about extension rights and termination rights and notarian protection and things like that come into play as well, and assignment rights and whether you're a buyer or you're going to be an owner occupied or you're just buying an investment, and what happens with HST and HST rebates. Like, there's a whole bunch of issues that come into play on new construction, and we can't possibly do it in one podcast. So we'll have to leave some of this for the next one.
Yeah, well, I look forward to it, David. It's a great topic. And again, it's so mainstream right now. We're finding that our consumers are asking for pre-construction projects. Again, shortage of inventory. So it's a great market. And I really want to encourage all the resale realtors out there to become more familiar. Again, you already have trust with your existing client base. So, it becomes easier for you to go back to them and say, guys, I know you bought a house with me. You have a son, you have a daughter, they're going to university, they're growing up. Let's look at this. So, in 10, 15 years, when your son or your daughter is older, you can help them get into the market by purchasing today. So it's a great strategy to offset your business and to do more deals, more transactions, is to really focus on pre-construction if you're a resale agent, to supplement what you're already the income that you're already earning.
Yeah, great advice as always, and looking forward to next week and continuing the discussion. And I think it'll help a lot of people.
I agree, David.
Okay.
Stay safe, everybody. Enjoy your week, and go look at some pre-construction projects. There's a lot of really awesome ones. The one that comes to mind right now is something called Beau Soleil, and it's being launched in Burlington. It's going to be a fantastic project. It's getting launched next year. I know a lot of our realtors have already worksheets signed up, but look it up and feel free to reach out to my office if you want any more information on any pre-construction projects out there.
Okay, that's great. Looking forward to next week. David, have a great week. Stay safe, everybody, and get out there.
All
Resale
right.
or new construction.
Absolutely. Buy real estate.
Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market and dive deep to understand the issues affecting buyers, sellers, investors, and businesses. If you love real estate as much as we do, sit back, relax, and gain an insider's edge to the exciting world of real estate. David Gorski is a broker and the owner of Sutton Summit Realty, a powerhouse brokerage providing guidance to over 180 realtors. And David Korman is a partner at Kormans LLP, a respected law firm specializing in residential and commercial real estate transactions, with offices located in Toronto, Mississauga, and Markham.